We're going to begin our sharing today with a little bit of chanting. Surprise! Uh, who would have guessed? Michael said that. And I want to offer the poems for inviting and listening to the sound of the bell. And then Fern will begin her sharing. So please come home to the experience of breath moving in and out of the body. It will do so on its own. Simply come in and follow that with awareness. And with each in-breath, you can imagine yourself gathering into presence, gathering into this moment, this place, the cells of the body, your heart, body, mind, all coming together. And with each out-breath, any tension, anything that's unnecessary to have in this moment, we can allow to fall away. Breathing in, gathering ourselves in. Breathing out, releasing and letting go of anything we don't need. And as we do this for our own space, the space of our own body and with our own consciousness, we can also be aware that we are seated here, although many miles apart, together on our Mother Earth. Many little islands of practice in this moment, together, breathing, offering our full presence, and the fruit of our practice, our understanding and our compassion, able to well up and spill out of this small space that each of us inhabits, like a fountain, begin to find its way into our beautiful Mother Earth. She is very happy to have us all practicing in this moment. Body, speech, and mind in perfect oneness. I send my heart along with the sound of the bell. May the hearers waken from forgetfulness and transcend the path of anxiety and sorrow. I listen, and this wonderful sound brings me back to my true home. May the sound of the bell reach deeply into the cosmos. In even the darkest places, may beings hear it clearly, so that understanding lights up their hearts. They may realize awakening and find their way home. I listen, I listen. I feel my afflictions begin to dissolve. My mind calm, my body relax. A smile is born upon my lips. Following the sound of the bell, my breath guides me back to the safe island of mindfulness. And in the garden of my heart, a flower of peace blooms beautifully.
Good morning, dear Sangha. Can you hear me? Wow, wonderful. It's so good to see you all, to be together today. I'd like to begin by reading a poem by Thai Thich Nhat Hanh called Our True Heritage. The cosmos is filled with precious gems. I want to offer a handful of them to you this morning. Each moment you are alive is a gem, shining through and containing earth and sky, water and clouds. It needs you to breathe gently for the miracles to be displayed. Suddenly you hear the birds singing, the pines chanting, the flowers blooming, the blue sky, the white clouds, the smile and the marvelous look of your beloved. You, the richest person on earth, who have been going around begging for a living. Stop being the destitute child. Come back and claim your heritage. You should enjoy your happiness and offer it to everyone. Cherish this moment. Let go of the stream of distress and embrace life fully in your arms. Today we wanted to offer a day of mindfulness that has a lot of nourishment and ease and gentleness, because we felt like we all need that right now. And we want to celebrate the earth and the earth in us. And Tai so beautifully, his practices that he's offered to our community are so full of these kinds of practices that bring us back to the earth, knowing our deep connection, our interconnection, that we're not separate. Mm-hmm. And as we strengthen our practice of feeling our connection to the earth, we can use it in many different ways in our daily life as a resource. When I was a nun, I was only a nun about 6 months, and we started traveling. And that's when I learned to use the practice as a real anchor and a refuge, because we would often, fly through the night, maybe get like an hour of sleep, and then be on the bus going somewhere where we had to share teachings and meet many people in India or China. And it was extremely exhausting. And then not only is it exhausting, but you were there to be a refuge for people. So I had to learn how to create a source of energy in myself that I could access and renew myself without having a lot of sleep. I remember the moment I really learned how to do that, I was on the bus and we were going to be arriving soon, and I had no energy. And I started doing the flower fresh, seeing myself like a flower, feeling in my body what it would feel like to be a flower. And the energy just started flowing again through my body. And I did that for a while until I felt fresh again. I was full of energy. So these practices are very practical. Now I use it, the flower fresh one, a lot in the evening if I've had a busy day and my children come and climb on my lap and they're tired and they want my energy and I feel like I have no energy, or they're arguing and I just think to myself, how can I handle this right now? I feel like I'm a baby, I want to cry, but like I have to be there for them. And so I do the flower fresh meditation. I'm holding them and I just close my eyes and I see flower fresh. Where is that flower? Can I feel what that might feel like to be a flower in the morning opening up? And right away it starts to give me energy, a resource of energy. Connecting with the energy of the earth. I also use it when I have bigger moments of suffering. Like sometimes I'll make a mistake in the community. We have a nice community here, and we try to support each other, but sometimes we make mistakes, of course. And sometimes I'll make a mistake and be unskillful. And at first that's really painful for me. I can feel really embarrassed or ashamed. And when those strong feelings come up in me, I need to find a refuge that's bigger than this idea I have about myself and that I have to be in a certain way. And I do this meditation. I say to myself, okay, I'm not just this little me. Yeah, I've received many seeds from my ancestors, from society. They're all part of me. And of course, we are all learning and growing, and I'm going to make mistakes, and that's okay. And I'm not just this little person, I'm the whole earth, I'm part of the earth. And I imagine the forest with the trees. I say, I'm also the trees. So I have to get out of this like little me that did this silly thing and hurt somebody's feelings or caused difficulty. I'm also the forest. I'm also the mountains, and feel the mountain in me, feel the rivers in me. And that kind of meditation really helps me to be free again. And know that I might make mistakes, but really I want to be loving you. I want to be loving the community. And so I can let go of my pride and be okay with that and rest in my big body for support, to hold my places where I'm still growing. A few weeks ago, my uncle passed away. My dad lives about 3 hours from here. My uncle is living with my dad. And I knew I wanted to go to support my dad right away. He doesn't have other family nearby, except for his partner. And so it was just the next day after he passed away that I was in the car driving to support my dad. And feeling a lot of strong feelings in myself for the loss and the love, and but knowing that it was even harder for my dad, and that he was having to hold all the logistics of his brother passing away, and that I just had a day to be there to support him in the logistics and also just with my love. So as I was driving, I did this practice a lot. We were driving through the mountains of Vermont and New York and looking out the window, just meditating on my bigger body. Yeah, and my uncle's bigger body. I felt how we're both earth. We are David and Fern, but we're also earth, and we're forest, and we're the turning of the day, and we're the birds, and we're the mountains. And I could feel him and me that aren't caught in our body. And I could take refuge in the processes of nature, of giving life, and life returning to the earth. And I could take refuge in all the elements of me that weren't feeling sad, like the trees and the mountains, the things that were still very solid and fresh. So that when I arrived at my dad's house, I felt much more stable than when I got in the car in the morning. I could be for him, there for him with more freedom. During the Vietnam War, Thai started a school, which was a training for young people to be able to go out and serve the people in need during the war. And they would go out 5 or 6 days of the week and be helping people, find ways to help people. And there were hundreds and hundreds of students that came through that school. And he realized that they couldn't just be serving all the time, that they needed a day to rest. And so he had everyone practice a day of mindfulness, one day every week, where they stopped. They stopped giving and going out and being distracted by the world, and really took time just to be there, to let go, to do the basic practices. To refresh themselves and to heal themselves. And to strengthen their practice, to find that space in themselves again so they didn't become overwhelmed in the work that they were doing. And during the war, he wrote a book called The Lotus in the Sea of Fire. During the war, I feel like it felt like it was a sea of fire. And the day of mindfulness, I imagine, is being the lotus. It's very fresh. And the lotus is a symbol of awakening or freedom. So they found a way to give birth to that freshness, that healing within that sea of fire that was raging everywhere. We need action right now. We need to be part of the transformation that's being called for, that we're all awakening to. We need to care for the people, our society, and the earth. We can't be asleep. There's too much at stake and too many wonderful possibilities. So we need that action, but we also need the non-action. I feel like America right now, it's like that sea of fire also. There's so much burning, there's so much suffering. It's very deep, very old, very painful and violent. And there's seeds of that within all of us and in the way our whole country has been created and is structured. The fire is there and we want to be there for that. But we need to stay fresh and clear so our actions really have love in them and freedom in them. And we have this gift of the day of mindfulness to do that. So this day in particular, I know our last day was more a call to action. And this day is more a call to stopping. Our lives are so complicated. There are so many things pulling us away from ourselves all the time. Our work, our projects, politics. But sometimes we just need time to be just a human being, just to be a human being. Not an idea of who we are or what we should be doing. Not trying to get something else, something more, make something more perfect. Just be. And that's what we're invited to do in our practice, in our community, in our days of mindfulness. Just be yourself. Allow ourselves to remember that we already have enough to be happy. Just to open our eyes and look at the world. Just to feel our body. Just to feel our eyes. To know we have eyes. I can feel them. I can feel them from the inside. They are precious gems. I have ears. I can feel them from the inside and hear sounds of life. I have my body and my breath. I can feel my breath moving in through my body and out. My practice, just to be aware of my breath, to know I'm alive in this moment. Is enough. It's quite simple to taste the freedom that the Dharma offers. Come back to ourselves and just let go. If we think we need our big house in order to be happy, we'll never be happy. We'll always be afraid we might lose our big house. If we think we need something out there, we'll never have the freedom that the Dharma offers. We can do our best, of course, to take care of the outer forms, but we know that life is changing. We don't want to grasp too strongly onto those outer forms because they'll change. And if we're grasping, we'll always be afraid of that change. So we're invited to come back here. I think as a spiritual practitioner, that's this opportunity to gently let go of our identities out there, our house, our job, and our title. We can still have our job and our title, but not think that that is us, that that's what makes us happy. Our appearance, our political views. Letting go of those things as our identity. And instead we find our home, our true home is in ourselves as a free person, in our breath, in the Dharma. And like the touching the earth, I love this image that actually comes from older teachings, but Tai brought again of the bodhisattvas springing up from the earth. Springing up from the earth again and again. Instead, we can live in that aspiration to be a bodhisattva, springing up from the earth in this lifetime and again, returning to take care of the earth. and to bring more love into the world. More love and more freedom. Thank you, dear Sangha.
Sitting here in this moment, protected by the Sangha, my happiness is clear and alive. What a great fortune to have been born a human, to encounter the Dharma, to be in harmony with others, and to water the mind of love in this beautiful garden of practice. The energies of the Sangha and the mindfulness trainings are protecting and helping me not to make mistakes or to be swept along in darkness by unwholesome seeds. With kind spiritual friends, I am on the path of goodness, illumined by the light of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. Although the seeds of suffering are still in me in the form of afflictions and habit energies, mindfulness is also there, helping me to touch what is most wonderful within and around me. I can still enjoy mindfulness of the six senses. My eyes look peacefully upon a clear blue sky. My ears listen with wonder to the songs of birds. My nose smells the rich scent of sandalwood. My tongue tastes the nectar of the Dharma. My posture is upright, stable, and relaxed. My mind is one with my body. If there were not a world-honored one, if there were not a wonderful Dharma, if there were not a harmonious Sangha, I would not be so fortunate to enjoy this Dharma happiness today. Dear friends, I like that chant so much because it's so briefly and so sweetly talks about all these aspects of our practice, which deeply nourish us and keep us on track. Um, So this day is themed around grounding and healing with the earth. And our earth, she is a ground for us. Our earth, the elements of our earth, so diverse, so vital. She's beneath our feet and she is all around us, our earth. Our earth, she is the air that we breathe. She's the water that we cleanse with. She's the shelter that we build. She's the basis for our health, our happiness, our compassion. She is the ground that we stand upon. She's a ground that we rely on. And when the earth shakes, when she trembles, we are afraid, we are unstable, we are unwell. Our family and our friends, our social community, our society, these are threads in a cloth that connect us to all of life, the relationship with people and friends and community around us. And the quality of those relationships forms the basis of our experience of belonging, our experience of meaningfulness, our experience of fulfillment. Very important things. And these are also a kind of ground that we stand upon. They are a ground that we rely on. Our family, our friends, our community. And when our family and our friends, when our community shake, when our society trembles, we are afraid, we are unstable, and we are unwell. Turning inward, we can see our states of mind, the patterns in our feelings, in our thinking, these things that are active in us at any given moment throughout every day, a formative part of our experience, our thoughts, our feelings, our inner life, our mental states. And these experiences in us have the power to bring about wholesomeness or unwholesomeness through all of our actions. how we are thinking and feeling pours itself out into the world from deep inside of us. And this is also a ground on which we stand, a ground on which we rely. Mostly we don't know it. We don't pay very close attention. But we are always standing upon the ground of our thinking and feeling and the way that that ripples out into the world. And when our hearts and minds shake and tremble, we are afraid, we are unstable, we are unwell. I'm someone who likes to think about this suffering that I experience in my life and the suffering I witness in the world in ways that help me to relate to it. For a long time in my life, I've been unable to run from what was painful, what was difficult. And so I look at our earth and I see our wonderful earth, this deep and powerful ground on which we stand. And I see that I need her. I need this Mother Earth to support me in many ways. And I also realize that whatever's happening in the earth, right, is happening within me. I look at my family and my friends and my community and my society, and I see the same. I look at my own states of mind and my thinking and feeling, and I see the same. I offer these as 3 realms into which we can gaze, into which we can look, and not only recognize that when any one of these areas of our life, any one of these realms shakes and trembles, that we become unwell, that we become afraid, but also recognize that there are so many ways that we can bring nourishment and healing into all 3 of these realms every single day. And starting from the earth and then seeing all the people in my life coming closer and then looking right inside my own mind. I'd like to share with you a little bit about orienting myself from that place to then reflect again outwards. In Buddhism, every thought and every feeling that we experience is very important. And the Buddha offered a teaching that goes like this. Suppose there was a dyer, someone who dyes cloth, and had a cloth which was stained and dirty, and dipped it in some dye or other, whether it was yellow or red or pink or blue. It would look poorly dyed and impure in color. Why is that? Because it was dirty and stained to begin with. And that will just show through. So too with the mind. If the mind is in an unwholesome place, an unhappy destination can be expected. That means is, if we follow our thoughts and feelings in their unwholesomeness, we can expect unhappiness. We can expect the trembling, the shaking, the fear. We can expect to not be well. But the Buddha also offered the flip side, as he often did in his teachings. Suppose that dyer had a piece of cloth which was clear and bright, right, and dipped it in some dye, blue, yellow, red, pink. Draw it out. It's well dyed and pure in color. Why? Because the cloth was clear and bright to begin with. So too with the mind, right? If we are in a place of wholesomeness, a place of stability, a place of joy and ease in our mind, we can expect a happy destination. We can be carried in that direction. Like an apple tree that is growing in the garden, and it's going to grow apples. It's not going to grow oranges. We might want it to grow oranges, but if it's an apple tree, it's going to grow apples. So if we allow our mental states, our thoughts and feelings and the patterns in our mind to run wherever they want, they will run wherever they want, and they will not necessarily bring about a beautiful result. If they are unwholesome, if they're full of fear and agitation, if those mental states in us are full of instability, if they're shaking and trembling, whoa, what's it going to bring into the world? More of its own. We are a species that propagate our own, right? Just like the apple tree produces apples. Our mental states are like that too. So this sort of a teaching illustrates how important it is for us to be aware of what's going on inside our hearts and minds, to take care of that place so that the ripples out from the inside of us carry our best, carry our understanding and our love into the world, and not more agitation and fear. And practices Fern was talking about are all about that. So there's craving and tension and stress in us. There's jealousy, there's sadness, there's depression, there's anger. These are mental states in our consciousness. These are the kinds of things that if we water them and grow them in us simply by thinking them through, by feeling them more and more, by agitating them with stories of more stress and more suffering, that will bring about more and more. And we will have a very difficult time seeing a beautiful path in the world if we're constantly feeding ourselves through images and sounds or through our own way of thinking and feeling this suffering. If we're feeding ourselves all this suffering, how are we going to experience some joy and some beauty or the possibility of hope and lightness? Probably not. Not unless a good friend in the Sangha comes along and says, hey, let me help, and takes us by the arm and walks us out into the beautiful sunshine and takes our shoes off and makes us feel the grass and get in touch with nourishing and refreshing elements in that moment to get us out of the cycles of suffering in our hearts and minds. Yeah. There are also many beautiful mental states in us: our joy, our patience, peacefulness, our loving kindness, our courage and non-fear, our understanding, our mindfulness, our compassion. All of these things are qualities inside that we can nourish. The realm of our mind is not something which happens to us. It's something that we cultivate. It is our garden. And even if we have been in quarantine inside a house for months, we still have a garden of our heart and mind, which is super important. And it's in this garden that we begin to make an offering to the world. I know it seems strange because these thoughts in my head, they're just in my head, right? They're only there. And no one else hears them, sees them, knows what's going on there. It's not quite true. It appears that way. But everything that lives inside our hearts and minds is rippling out, is available to the world around us. And those of us who are sensitive enough can understand very well what's going on in each other's hearts and minds. And we come home to take care of that garden, just like we would care for the little bean plant or carrot or potato or tomato in the garden, in the soil, in the dirt. We also care for our hearts and minds here. We give ourselves the time and the space to recognize when we are suffering and to hold it tenderly and find out what it needs so that it can rest, our suffering can rest and be transformed like compost over time into something nourishing, something which can feed our wholesome action in the future. There is this teaching which Thich Nhat Hanh would offer a lot in the time, at least when I was in Plum Village, about two Sanskrit words. The first one is called laksana, 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 and that's, you know, a simple English version of the Sanskrit word. Laksana. Laksana means sign or mark, appearance, the outer shape or form of something, right? Sarah introduced this day at the beginning. She mentioned something that I often say about doing Zoom conferencing, which is that I'm looking at your image on the screen. I'm not actually looking at you. I'm looking at pixels on the screen. And I like to be aware of that, because it asks me to come back to my heart space and actually remember that you are a living being, not in my screen, but elsewhere on the surface of the planet, and to really feel myself being present with you on the planet and not just being present with the electronic stimulus on the screen. This image of you on the screen is a laksana. It's a sign, a mark, an appearance. The second word is svabhava, S-V-A-B-H-A-V-A. Svabhava, S-V-A-B-H-A-V-A, svabhava. And this points to the meaning behind the appearance, the reality of what is underneath that. So when I see you as an image on the screen, I see the lakshana of you, the sign of you. But if I take a moment to really connect and recognize, wait, this is another living being, I can go through the sign, the mark on the screen, to actually get into a place where I'm more deeply in touch with the reality of who you are. Honestly, that's really a big mystery. So I'm going to be in touch with the mystery of who you are, right? And I know that out there in some direction on the surface of our earth, you are there also very close to your screen. And we are looking at signs and marks, appearances of each other, but that our reality is something really marvelous. And that the teaching that Thich would offer is to recognize signs and the beauty of the signs and the function of the signs, like red lights and green lights are signs, and they help us to avoid getting in accidents. But red lights and green lights are just marks and appearances for, what do they mean? Stop and go, right? There's something underneath it, which isn't evident on the surface. But if you have the education, if you've learned about red lights and green lights, then it actually becomes an embodied experience of stop or go, or caution with the yellow light, right? Signs and marks can lead us into a deeper experience, can support our functioning, can be incredible vehicles for inspiring art and communication and such. But there's always a deeper something under the surface, svabhava, the suchness, the mark of on the surface points towards the real meaning, the reality underneath the surface. All of our words are signs and marks. Inside them is a meaning. And when we learn a language, we communicate using signs and marks, but actually the meaning behind the words, those signs and marks, is what's important. Right? When you read the book, it's just a piece of paper with a whole bunch of black lines on it. But out of that book comes the most marvelous experience and transmission, sometimes of incredible suffering or incredible awakening and joy, from a piece of paper with black lines on it, right? The svabhava, the deep reality of the meaning beneath, is so important. And so when we look at ourselves, when we look at our families and our communities, our society, when we look at our Mother Earth, and we see inside us mental formations which are very painful, which are full of suffering, and they seem to confine us. Remember, these are signs and marks. And if we can open ourselves with our true presence, our breath, our open hearts, to be really present with that suffering inside, it will slowly, the true nature, the svabhava under that mark of painful emotion will be revealed, and we'll have a way to relate, an embodied way to relate to this experience, which can bring about something far more meaningful and beautiful than just the suffering on the surface. When we look at our society and our friends, when we see issues of poverty, injustice, and racism in the world, remember to look with both the eyes of the signs, but also with svabhava, to open your hearts and minds to what is really happening underneath, so that we're not caught in a partisan conflict, so that we are not drawn too deeply into a shallow place of understanding, right? And instead we can open our hearts to find a broader view, a more open view of what's happening, and through that, a course of action. The same with our Mother Earth. When we see her shaking and her trembling, when we grow afraid because of climate change, right? We can look deeply also, recognizing her beauty, recognizing her suffering, but we can also open our hearts to touch her svabhava, her true nature, which is old and deep and fabulously talented. She's amazing at regenerating and reworking things. I mean, even just look at a compost pile. It's ridiculously beautiful. The way something which you think of as slop and trash and stinky and smelly, within just a few weeks can become something you want to run your fingers through and plant in your garden to nourish the vegetables you're going to take into your body, right? She's been doing that for billions of years. It's amazing, right? Since the very beginning of like single and small-celled organisms, right? All this transformation, all this adaptation. This is a deeper look at the nature of who our Mother Earth is. And we can find that same resiliency, that same perseverance, that same, I believe, joy. I believe Mother Earth loves. I think she has a great time. She really enjoys herself in finding new ways to express and to find creative ways out of what we perceive of as death and bring about new life, right? So if we go beneath the surface of all the information, the signs and the marks that we have an opportunity to touch the deeper meaning underneath. By doing so, we gain a pathway, a way to be in the process of life and not caught looking for a particular outcome, looking for a particular result or an attainment. And instead of grasping onto this attainment, this result, this thing we want so much to happen, or this thing we don't want so much to happen, we open our hearts and minds to touch what's under the surface, and we find a way to live in that and to live with freedom and grace and beauty in the midst of it. The lotus in the sea of fire, right? We find our way. So please, dear friends, whenever you stop and take a moment to contemplate yourself as a continuation of our Mother Earth, you might see earth, water, air, and fire inside of you. When that happens, when you do that contemplation, acknowledge the signs of earth, water, air, and fire, and allow your heart to open to your true home. Your not self, not separate self, nature. And there, find a way forward into beauty to contribute something wonderful in the world. When you see yourself as a continuation of parents, grandparents, ancestors, and society, when you recognize the suffering of the transmission of ancestors, but you also recognize the experience and the gifts and the joy, right? Open your heart to feel that stability that you have in you as a continuation of all these ancestors, a part of life. And you have a path forward to continue. Ground, heal with our Mother Earth. All those many ways that you can do this practice. So happy to be with you today and to practice a little bit like this.